Spielberg's The Big Friendly Giant, or BFG, is one of those movies that sounds like a guaranteed winner on paper. It's directed by Steven Spielberg, written by Melissa Matheson, who is one of the screenwriters behind E.T., and based on a beloved Roald Dahl book. That is a great combination for a whimsical family fantasy. You hear those names attached, and you expect something magical. And to be fair, there is definitely some magic here. The BFG is a sweet, visually charming movie that feels like Spielberg returning to the world of childlike wonder after spending several movies in much more serious territory. Before this, he directed a string of historical dramas and prestige films, so it's refreshing to see him step back into something more imaginative and playful. After 3 serious historical biopics and dramas in a row, it's nice to see Spielberg return to whimsy. That alone gives the movie a certain appeal. The story follows Sophie, a young orphan who's taken one night by a giant, only to learn that he's not like the others. Instead of eating humans, he's gentle, awkward, sweet, and kind, spending his time collecting dreams and delivering them to children. At its core, this is really a friendship story between Sophie and the BFG, and that emotional center works. Spielberg has always been good at telling stories through a child's eyes, and that strength shows up here. There is a warmth and innocence to the movie that makes it easy to settle into. One of the movie's strongest elements is the motion capture work. The BFG himself looks very good, which is important because if the giant didn't work visually, the whole movie would fall apart. Thankfully, he never really falls into that uncanny valley problem that plagues a lot of CGI-heavy films. He feels expressive, believable, and emotionally present. His face carries a lot of personality, and the effects allow him to feel like a real character instead of just a CGI creation. Visually, the movie is also very appealing. Spielberg and his team create a world that feels dreamy and storybook-like, especially in the scenes involving dreams in giant country. There's a sense of scale and wonder that really fits into the source material. It's the kind of movie that wants to be a bedtime story, and for the most part, it succeeds at that. But as much as I enjoyed how charming the film could be, I do think it has a few issues that hold it back. The biggest issue being the humor. The movie relies way too much on fart jokes. Yes, Roald Dahl has always had a slightly mischievous and childish side, and some of the stories do include weird or gross humor, but the movie heavily leans on that kind of joke more than it should. Spielberg and Dahl are usually classier than this. You expect whimsy and imagination from them, not this much emphasis on bodily function humor. And it's not just one quick joke here or there. The movie returns to it enough that it starts to feel like a crutch. And that's frustrating, because the film already has enough heart and visual imagination without needing to keep going back to that well. Rather than adding to the fun, it often cheapens the tone. There are moments where the movie feels like it's building something magical, only to undercut itself with humor that feels very juvenile. Another issue is that the plot is not super linear. The movie kind of drifts at times rather than building with a strong sense of momentum. It moves from one sequence to another in a way that feels more episodic than tightly structured, and that makes the story feel a little loose. It's not confusing, but it does lack a strong forward drive. You're watching a series of charming moments more than a story that keeps escalating in a really compelling way. And I think that's part of why the movie doesn't hit as hard as Spielberg's best family films. When you compare this to, say, E.T. or Hook, the BFG just is not as memorable. Those movies have strong emotional highs, more iconic scenes, and a clearer narrative pull. They really build towards something. The BFG is enjoyable, and I like spending time in its world, but once it ended, it didn't leave the same lasting impression. It has pieces of that Spielberg magic, but not quite the full effect. That doesn't make it a bad movie. Not every Spielberg fantasy has to be a masterpiece. Sometimes a movie can simply be good, gentle, and worth your time, and that's what I think about this one. It's a solid family fantasy with a lot to like. A strong central friendship, impressive motion capture, beautiful visuals, and a welcome return to whimsy from Spielberg. I also appreciate the movie feels sincere. A lot of modern family films rely heavily on nonstop jokes or pop culture references. The BFG feels a little more old-fashioned in that sense. It wants to tell a sweet story, it wants to be magical, it wants to capture that bedtime story feeling. Even when it slightly stumbles, I can still respect it. So overall, I like the BFG. I don't think it's top-tier Spielberg, and I definitely think the fart humor and the loose, not super linear plot keep it from being better, but the motion capture is strong, the visuals are lovely, and the movie has enough heart to make it work. It may not be on the same level as E.T. or Hook, but it's still a solid effort. I give it a B, 8 out of 10, and 4 out of 5 stars.